In this video, I'm going to be going through the UFC fighters I think will go undefeated in 2026. Starting with the first fighter, which is Islam Makhachev. I think Islam Makhachev's first fight in 2026 is probably going to be sometime in March, and I think it's going to be against Ian Gary. And in that fight, I think Makhachev takes that one home. I think it's going to be more competitive than JDM versus Makhachev, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to end pretty similar in the fact that I think Makhachev's just going to end up getting a ton of control and winning the fight that way. I don't think he's going to get a finish over Ian Gary, but I can see a 4-1 decision in Islam Makhachev's favor against Ian Gary. I think he might lose the first round, but the rest of the rounds, I think he's going to get the grappling going, and it's going to be pretty much game over. Now, going into his next fight, I think it's either going to be sometime in the summer or at Madison Square Garden at the end of the year. Let's just say he fights in the summer. I think his next fight will probably be against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov will have a fight around the time Islam Makhachev has his fight against Ian Gary. I'm predicting it's going to be against Usman. If he fights Usman, he's 100% beating Usman, and that would give him a title shot against Islam Makhachev. And I see Islam doing the same exact thing to Shavkat Rakhmonov as he will do to Ian Gary. And I think it'll actually be more dominant of a win than his fight against Ian Gary. I still feel like Shavkat Rakhmonov is just overrated. His wrestling and grappling, I don't think is that good. And especially against a guy like Makhachev, I don't think he's going to have that great of a time fighting Islam Makhachev. But, Shavkat Rakhmonov is a huge name, and that will definitely be a big fight. Now, if he beats those two and he still fights at the end of the year, it'll probably be against somebody like Michael Morales and Carlos Prates. If, let's say, Michael Morales beats Carlos Prates and fights Islam Makhachev, I'm still going with Makhachev in that fight as well. I don't think Morales will be ready for the grappling. I don't see anybody at welterweight beating Islam Makhachev, and I think he's going to go undefeated, whether he has 1 or 3 fights. Now, the next fighter who I think won't lose in 2026 is Tom Aspinall. I think he's going to fight Cyril Gane sometime in the first quarter of 2025. At the latest, maybe sometime in late spring. And I think he beats Cyril Gane. I know it was a close fight for as long as it lasted. Cyril Gane won that first round, in my opinion. I thought the fight would be closer than people were expecting, and it kind of was up until the eye poke. I still think Tom Aspinall's going to win it, though. I think there's too many ways for him to win. I think he has more power on his side. And after that, I don't think there's anybody at heavyweight that's going to be able to challenge Tom Aspinall. I think what's going to happen is Alex Pereira moves up to fight Tom Aspinall. I think the fight might happen sometime later in the year, and I think Alex Pereira loses that. I just think Tom Aspinall, kind of like the same thing I said against Cyril Gane, I think there's too many ways for him to win. I think Tom Aspinall will go for a takedown probably immediately when the fight starts. And also in the striking, we've seen Alex Pereira get caught. We saw him got caught by Adesanya. We've seen him get rocked by Roundtree. Aspinall's a really big, long fighter. I think Pereira kind of struggles a little bit more with the fighters that have range and explosiveness. I think Aspinall beats Pereira in that matchup. And I think, those are the 2 fights Aspinall's going to have in 2026. I think he's going to win both of them. I also think Volkanovski will go undefeated in 2026, mainly for the reason that I think he's going to retire after his fight against Lopez. I've heard some rumors that Volkanovski is going to retire after the fight with Lopez, and I think they might be true. And even so, even if Volkanovski didn't retire, I don't think he loses to a guy like Lerone Murphy or Movsar Evelev. I don't think there's anybody at featherweight that beats Volkanovski regardless of if he retires or not. The next fighter I think will go undefeated is Ilia Topuria. I think he's literally going to have 1 fight in 2026, which is really unfortunate. I completely thought that he would have, 2 or 3 fights in 2026, but we heard the news that he's relinquishing his belt, and he's probably not going to fight until the summer against the winner of Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje. So I think his next fight will probably be against, Paddy Pimblett in 2026 in the summer. I think Ilia Topuria wins that easily. I don't think Paddy Pimblett stands a chance against Ilia Topuria, and I don't think Ilia Topuria will have another fight in 2026. I don't think he's going to have a quick turnaround. When has Ilia Topuria had a quick turnaround except for early in his career? I don't think he's going to do that, and especially against a guy like Arman Tsarukyan, who's probably next after Ilia Topuria beats Paddy Pimblett. I don't think there's going to be a quick turnaround in 2026 for him, and he's probably going to have one of the easiest years of anybody in the UFC because he has to fight probably Paddy Pimblett or Justin Gaethje. Either of them are extremely easy matchups for him, which is pretty disappointing because Topuria is probably one of the most entertaining and best fighters in the UFC, and he's going to fight once, and it's going to be against a completely unfair matchup that nobody thinks he's going to lose. The next fighter I think is going to go undefeated is Khamzat Chimaev. Similar story with Ilia Topuria. I think Khamzat Chimaev might have 1 fight in 2026, maybe 2 if we're lucky. Even if he had 5 fights in 2026, I don't think he's losing against anybody. Nobody at at 185, I think has a chance of beating Khamzat Chimaev. I think the only person to beat Khamzat Chimaev is probably at 205 pounds. Khamzat Chimaev is probably going to fight Imavov sometime in May or June, and then he might have a fight in Abu Dhabi in October. I don't know who it's going to be against, but it's probably going to be a complete domination by Khamzat Chimaev. I don't think he's losing. I also think Arman Tsarukyan is going undefeated in 2026, and maybe not for the reason you guys think. I think he's going to go undefeated because I don't think he's even going to fight in 2026. We saw what happened last time.
Around 1 a.m. we received a call from Arman Tsarukyan, who informed us that he was experiencing significant back pain due to the injury. He feels like he is not healthy enough to compete, so he is out of the fight.
He ruined his chance to fight against Islam Makhachev, and he didn't fight until the end of the year. Because of the fact that they passed him up for the interim title fight, dude, I don't see him wanting to fight any contender. And even if he does, I don't see Arman Tsarukyan losing to any contender in lightweight. The only person I think can beat Arman at lightweight is Ilia Topuria, and that's why I think he's going to go undefeated in 2026. Now, the last champion I think is going undefeated is Alexandre Pantoja. I don't think they're going to make the super fight between Pantoja and Merab. Mainly because I think, if anything, Merab's going to go up to featherweight. If Volkanovski retires, and maybe even if he doesn't retire, I think Merab will end up getting a fight at featherweight sometime in 2026. And to be honest, the reason I don't have Merab on here is because I think he probably loses at featherweight. I think Merab would lose to Diego Lopez. I think he would lose to Volkanovski. And I think he might lose against Movsar. And I think Pantoja seems, from what I've heard from him online...
Do you ever consider going up 135 and challenge Merab or something?
Maybe when Merab retire, I try to go another bout, but Merab is too good, you know. But I have a lot of respect for him. Me and my team talking about that, but we need a lot of time to understand that, change my body to 135. When you talk about the flyweight, bantamweight divisions, 10 pounds is a lot of difference.
He seems pretty content to be fighting at flyweight for his entire career. Even though there's really no matchup for him, I think he's going to still keep fighting at flyweight for all of 2026. And mainly because there's nobody for him, he's going to have an undefeated year in 2026. Now, the last person I think will go undefeated in 2026 is Magomed Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev's in a similar situation as Arman Tsarukyan, where the only person who I think beats him is the champion. They might do an interim title fight between Yuri Prochazka and Ankalaev if Alex Pereira moves up sometime later in the year. I think Ankalaev beats Yuri. I've heard a lot of people saying that Yuri's a bad matchup for Ankalaev. They can see Yuri winning. I think the complete opposite. I think Yuri would get his ass pieced up by Ankalaev. And as for everybody else at light heavyweight, I don't see Ankalaev losing. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.